And can I just say, can you hear that dove and those birds? There's so much sounds going on right now. I am finding myself slightly distracted. So I hope you're enjoying this video. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Ardella Vision, where I hope to inspire you to envision more for your life. If you are a returning subscriber, hi, welcome back. If you are new here, hi, welcome. Please remember to subscribe and to click the gray bell to be notified the moment I upload another video every Wednesday on all things ADHD, mental well-being, and personal development. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about Dr. Amen's 7 types of ADHD. Can you hear that car over there? I'm in the country, let me tell you, the country. But according to Dr. Amen, there are 7 types of ADHD. Now, I know that most of us know about the 3 types of ADHD. I've talked about it before in my videos, which are the hyperactive type, combination type ADHD, or inattentive type. If you want to check out my videos on that, you can. I've barely touched on the 7 types of ADHD in the past, but a lot of you got really excited about that topic, and I've had people present it to me in the past before, and I wanted to look into it. Now, this is not according to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders. Dr. Amen, child and adult psychiatrist who specializes in diagnosing ADHD and brain scans and everything like that. He specializes in that area. And this is according to his research, scanning over tens of thousands of different brains. He has concluded that there are, in fact, 7 types of ADHD according to his research. These SPECT scans show how blood flows to the brain and how this would affect somebody's ADHD. I'm just touching on it and looking into it, and I just feel like I got like some exciting information, and I feel like it's just something exciting to share. So I did, get a bunch of resources, and I'm gonna put those in the comments below or the description below if you wanna go check out where I got this information from, and you can make your own conclusions on what you think of this. I myself would love to go to Dr. Amen's clinic and have my brain scanned and to see if there's any information I can find out about myself to better myself. But in the meantime, let's get talking. So here are the 7 types of ADHD according to Dr. Amen. And no, this is not sponsored. Yes, I would like to meet him. So type 1 is called classic ADHD, or I would also refer to this as hyperactive ADHD. Symptoms of this type of ADHD include inattentive, distracted, disorganized, hyperactive, restless. It can even include procrastination and impulsivity. People with the classic ADHD have decreased blood flow, wow, I can't talk, to the area of the brain that is the cerebellum, the prefrontal cortex, and the basal ganglia, also known as the basal ganglia, which the basal ganglia helps produce dopamine. Type 2 is inattentive ADHD, which the symptoms include being inattentive and or easily distracted, but not hyperactive. You could also be considered sluggish, slow moving, not a lot of motivation. People with inattentive type ADHD can also be described as like couch potatoes, kind of spacey and lazy and not very motivated. What I would like to call a daydreamer, which is what I am. And this is very interesting to me, but this type of ADHD is more commonly diagnosed in girls as in boys, and it's much later in life because usually people with inattentive type ADHD don't necessarily have those overt behavioral issues. People with this type of ADHD have decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex as well as low levels of dopamine. I feel like this is making some sense. But type 3, according to Dr. Amen, is overfocused ADHD. I think these are the people that their hyperfocus is like a superpower. Overfocused ADHD includes symptoms of the classic type ADHD, but these people have trouble shifting their attention to something else. They quickly get stuck in loops of negative self-talk and negative thought patterns. They're obsessive, they're constantly worrying, they're very inflexible, and have frequent oppositional and argumentative behavior. This reminds me of somebody that I know. The interesting part about this is I love understanding maybe the why behind it, because people with this type of overfocused ADHD have decreased levels of serotonin and dopamine as well. The goal of treatment for somebody with this type of ADHD is to increase both of these neurotransmitters, which is the nervous system's chemical messengers. It's interesting that Dr. Amen does explain that when people with this type of ADHD take medication, specifically stimulant medication, they become more anxious and more worried when taking this medication. So he tries to use supplements at first, and if this doesn't work, then he chooses to maybe go the medication route. He then prescribes medication if the supplements aren't effective, which is just interesting because I feel like it's so commonplace in all the ADHD community to find some people that ADHD medication really works, and then some situations where it doesn't work at all. And all of us are trying to tell each other what we should or shouldn't do, or this worked for me or this didn't. If there's more than just 3 types of ADHD, which I'm curious if, according to him that there is, it's just not recognized in the DSM-5. Maybe there is, and maybe that's why some of us thrive on medication and some of us don't. I mean, if you were the obsessive type ADHD, obviously medication might cause you to be more anxious and it might not be worth it. So I don't know, interesting food for thought. So type 4 is temporal lobe ADHD. This type includes the classic ADHD, but also to that adds being irritable, quick-tempered, worrying, dark thoughts, mood instability, and sometimes mild paranoia, which maybe that's me because sometimes I could be paranoid. Which reminds me of a good Kanye West song. People with this type of ADHD may have learning and memory issues as well. People with temporal lobe ADHD have irregularities in their temporal lobe and have decreased activity in their prefrontal cortex. The goal of treatment is to soothe neuronal activity and to stop nerve cells from firing unpredictably. Type 5 is limbic ADHD. This type includes classic ADHD with chronic low-level sadness, but not depression. Maybe that's what I have. Negativity, the glasses have empty syndrome, frequent feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness, and just overall low self-esteem are the telltale signs of this type of ADHD. People with limbic ADHD have excessive activity in the limbic part of the brain, which is where mood is controlled. They have reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex of the brain when they're both resting and working on a task. Type 6 is known as the ring of fire ADHD. This is a more extreme version than the classic ADHD, including additional symptoms of being really distracted, angry, irritable, overly sensitive to external noises, being sensitive to light or to certain types of clothing, and touch. That's how I feel about the bugs right now. They keep touching me. People with this type of ADHD are often inflexible, extremely verbal, oppositional, and have cyclical moodiness. Sounds exciting. People with the ring of fire ADHD have an overactive brain. There's simply just an excessive amount of overactivity in the cerebral cortex of the brain, including other areas of the brain. And I just heard a woodpecker. I feel like he might be trying to say like, I have ring of fire ADHD. I've been out here before and I've heard coyotes howling. It's pretty amazing. So last but not least, we have type 7, which is anxious ADHD. And I know I've made videos about anxiety and ADHD, and this might be some interesting insight into being anxious and having ADHD, because not everybody that has ADHD is anxious. Did you hear the woodpecker again? So anxious ADHD includes classic ADHD symptoms, plus feeling anxious and tense, like freezing in situations that cause anxiety and anticipating the worst. People with anxious ADHD have increased activity in the basal ganglia area of the brain, which aids in making dopamine. This differs majorly compared to all the other types of ADHD, according to Dr. Amen, because this is the only type of ADHD that has increased levels of activity in the basal ganglia, where all the other types have decreased levels of activity in the basal ganglia. They have low levels of activity in this part of the brain. So this is the 7 types of ADHD according to Dr. Amen, who is an ADHD specialist. And I find his work to be very compelling and super interesting. He has 8 clinics around the great United States. I'd have to look into it. Oh, there's a bug. And dependent upon the different type of ADHD you have, he has treatments for each type. So if you're interested in learning about Dr. Amen, his clinics, his treatments, his thought processes, everything about him, I'm going to leave some of the links that I had looked into down below in the description box. I really hope you enjoyed my outdoor settings. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you got something out of it, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I always love hearing from you. Please remember to subscribe and to click the gray bell to be notified the moment I upload another video every Wednesday. If you haven't already, please give this video one big thumbs up. It really helps me out. And share it with anybody you think might glean some insightful information from this video. And y'all must know by now that you are all in my prayers, and I really, really hope you enjoy your week, and I will see you next time. Bye! So anxious ADHD includes Do you hear?